Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Eric Shiraev. We continue studying international politics, international relations. We have gone together, covered several subjects, and we studied realism, we studied liberalism, we took a glimpse into the fields of constructivism, conflict theories. Now it's time for us to apply this knowledge to several major subjects that international relations field of study is concerned with, and we'll begin with international security. This is a vast area, and one of the most, I would say, important in terms of your employment. I would say that if you just roughly take all students in the past who took my classes in international relations field, maybe most of them got jobs in the field of national security. Some of them in diplomacy, some of them are in economics and so legal issues and humanitarian issues, but most in field of national security. I will start with one of the wisdoms by one of those ancient Greeks philosophers who always guess things right, and they gave us some interesting feedback on every subject. Again, internal vigilance is the price of liberty. In other words, the assumption is here that values and freedoms and human life is important things to defend, and we need to be vigilant, we need to be careful, we need to be paying attention to life, to our liberty, the ability to make judgments and to live the way we want to live. And the question is how much we have to pay, under what circumstances, and how actively do we have to promote security policies. Well, it is international security is about making agreements and signing treaties. It's about intelligence and gathering information, analyzing. It's about armed forces. It's about defense of borders and defense of territories, defense of countries. It's about human life and death. It's about families. It's about us, people who pay heavy price for defending their countries and for the sake of international security. It's about men and women in uniform, without uniform. I'll mention about it. Historically, international security had been a field for men to be in, even though with the big changes that were taking place in the 20th century, in the past century, in many countries, when women acquire more power as prime ministers, as presidents, and took very important key positions in their governments in many countries. Still, in most countries, in the vast majority of countries, defense and security were given men to take care of. Only a few countries, in particular Germany, as you see in the slide, only a few countries, women were in charge of defense and security issues. So I'll begin with a case which took place some time ago, 2014, when Russia and Russian government issued a decree to admit the Republic of Crimea into Russian Federation after the occupation, annexation of this peninsula, which used to belong to a country known as Ukraine. No, it's a country. Liberal international scholars, liberal supporters of liberalism would argue that, well, that was a challenge to international global order. It's a challenge to the issue of trust. And so how can we live in this new world, or how can we live in this world if countries begin to attack and annex, grab territories of other countries? Definitely this is something which is an extraordinary condition, and an event which cannot be tolerated. Real politic supporters, realists, suggested that, that was maybe expected because Russia was acted from a position of weakness and used force to reestablish its security interests in Eurasia. yeah, we can explain their actions. However, we can't tolerate the actions. That's why it's unacceptable. Constructivists and political psychologists argue that, yeah, that's about old ethnic issues, and Russian people and people Ukraine have common roots. And it's about national pride, and many among Russian political elites felt insecure and were longing for the time of the Soviet Union. It's an act of desperation just to remind them about greatness of a former Soviet Union. And the West also bear responsibility for ignoring Russia, for pressuring Russia, for sanctioning Russia in the past. And that's what the result is. And yet liberals, the real politics supporters, constructivists, and otherists, and the supporters of different isms and ideas in international politics didn't know exactly what the country is supposed to do, except putting some extra pressure on Russia, to which we'll be returning in this class in my several examples. But what happened there after 2014, unfortunately, the term New Cold War emerged, and fears of a larger conflict or lingering conflict or many other small conflicts, fears related to insecurity again emerged, and got reinforced by events on the ground, and they remain one of the most important kind of issues in international relations today. Historically, we refer to national security issues that's referred to sovereignty, integrity, interest of a state. And it's different from, say, domestic security, which is commonly associated with criminal activities and handled by police. So international security logically refers to national security issues between two or among several states. And here we deal with the threats to international security, such as hostile actions of states, hostile intentions of those states, the plans to commit hostile actions, actual conflicts, and also problems that occur because of actions or inactions of failing states. That's very unstable states. So again, see, it's about threats of violence, instability, and potential destruction, and thoughts, ideas about how to address those concerns, those fears. This slide shows how vast this area is on the level of federal government. You can examine this by yourself later on and see other sources that are available. But it's a vast area. It's so many departments and divisions and sub-departments and agencies in the United States. How many of them deal with national and international security? We talk about tens of thousands of people who literally work in this field, from gathering intelligence to analyzing intelligence, creating policies, implementing policies, assessing threats, assessing potentials, studying foreign leaders, studying their ability, opportunities, and insecurities and security policies. So it's a huge, vast area of studies. Overall, three categories of issues are important for us. The assessment of conflicts. Second is war conflict itself. And third is security policies. So analyzing these three issues separately and most likely together, by analyzing those three issues, professionals suggest security policies for their countries and for their governments. We move fast and quick, and I mentioned most important highlights. Studying of conflict, studying of war. So what's being done here? Well, here just analysis of conflict and war. Analysis of conflict and war based on what? On past experiences, past facts, and factual materials available from previous wars. And it is about assuming that that's similar or identical, similar or resembling things, facts, events could take place in a future conflict, and do everything possible to avoid such conflicts. Well, there's a certain division between offensive and defensive war. We know from position of constructivists an offensive war for one country can be seen a defensive war for another. There are disagreements about which war is offensive, defensive. Case in point, it's aggression of Germany against Poland in 1939, which was portrayed to the German people as a typical defensive gesture of Germany, allegedly being threatened by Polish army actions. But the whole world knows that Germany had a plan to attack Poland, and they attacked it, but to German people it was presented as a defensive war in Germany. Why is important to understand offensive defensive issues? Because it's, again, international legitimacy. It's more and more important today for people in politics to know whether or not their actions seen as legitimate by international community. And also sympathy. It's an important psychological factor. In politics, an important factor. Usually the sympathy of most people are with the victims of aggression. So those who defend their territory, their land, their families, and so that's also important in security policy. There are preemptive and preventive wars. That's wars that take place when a country is not attacked, but the attack is either very probable or it's imminent. Lots of contradictions and lots of controversial items here because certainly it's about how you see the potential problem, saying it's inevitable, we had no choice but to launch a military assault against the country. This picture you see, it's actions against Libya in 2011. The other side can argue, no, it was not inevitable. It was preventable. You missed negotiations. You didn't exhaust all the opportunities. So to portray a conflict as a preemptive or preventive, to portray your actions is important diplomatic, political, ideological, media-related issues. It's about the power to persuade, power to show, the power to explain to people, because any military action can be seen differently by different sides. We remember this, studying constructivism, international relations. There are wars that based on retaliation. So just you simply respond to punish the other side for what the side had done, in your opinion, to you before. One of the examples is the 1979 war of China against Vietnam. So Vietnam acted unilaterally by removing a genocidal regime of Pol Pot in Cambodia there. But China considered this act well, it's a provocation, inappropriate, destabilizing in Southeast Asia, and China attacked Vietnam in 1979. There were thousands of casualties, of course, and China sustained casualties. Vietnamese people sustained casualties. This war is not much advertised in China these days, but Vietnamese people remember this war. And unfortunately, the price for this action of people in power, the price is paid by us, but sons and daughters just who are recruited, who are sent to fight, to satisfy the ambitions or some plans that were created in the heads and offices of people who are in power. We also talked about proxy wars, which we studied when we examined real politics. A proxy war is a conflict which is managed by two countries, but they don't actually participate in the conflict. They act through their mediators, their representatives, or other states that actually engaged in that war. A classical example, the war in Angola that began in 1975, involving South Africa, Cuba, United States, and Russia. There were countries that were essentially sponsoring in many ways, politically and economically, morally supporting opposite sides in this war. We studied this in recent past. Security policies are based on assessment of a current conflict, potential conflict, and based on the theory or ideas that dominate the minds of top political advisors and leaders of states. Leaders and advisors can choose unilateralism. So unilateralism means that you act by yourself as a country. Just you make a decision and you act. Multilateralism, by definition, it involves several states. Before you act, you pick up the phone, secured line, and just talk to your colleagues about what to do, how to do, or you use diplomatic channels to discuss your action. It makes sense. Unilateral, multilateral. It's becoming more complicated. Isolationism is a term which easy to understand, but it's misleading. Many people believe that isolationism is, I do nothing, I don't do anything, just I wash my hands, I just stay put, nothing concerns me. It's not true. Isolationism is still unilateralism, but is choosing to act or not to act based on own interest. You isolate yourself, essentially, from input of others, and you make decisions based on what you consider important or not important for you. And it's also about non-involvement in international alliances. Unilateralism may be based on inaction. So just there's a problem somewhere in the world, but you stay put and say, well, we can't do anything here. We should not do anything there. It's not our interest. We don't do it. We stay put. Could be interventionism. So you act unilaterally, or it could be cooperation. So you decide to act, but still you ask other countries to join. Multilateralism also can be based on interventionism. And also it can be based on cooperation. So it simply becomes complicated. You act alone or together. You don't do anything, you do things which based on your interventions policies. You don't ask for permission, just you simply go. Or you somehow use other methods. So persuasion, economic sanctions, economic incentives, other methods to achieve your security goals. In military academies, college campuses, and think tanks, and graduate studies, and books written about several kinds of warfare, it's important to understand. And the views of violence and on the battlefield would translate in the views of how to defend your country against the violence on the battlefield, and how to prevent violence against your country or against other countries globally. Well, if I do it briefly, conventional warfare, just the type of warfare which was known to ancestors throughout the history of humankind up to the middle of the 20th century. It's tanks and columns and trenches and fortifications and movements of thousands and tens of thousands and millions of people, then aircraft and battleships, standard conventional warfare. Then time came from nuclear warfare, which changed strategies significantly, which I will also suggest today in which ways and how. So nuclear warfare, well, technically 1945, the acquisition of nuclear weapons by the United States, but then 1949, Soviet Union got nuclear weapons, and then Britain, France, China, and then India, Pakistan, we have nuclear war. Asymmetrical warfare was known to our ancestors for centuries, but significance of certain political developments and contemporary world gave more significance to asymmetrical warfare. Essentially, it's a terrorism and terrorist actions. Guerrilla, just fewer individuals compared to regular armed forces, having fewer weapons and fewer means to deliver deadly blow to the opponent. They still make difference in politics, and they create insecurities in many parts of the world by launching attacks, by starting conflicts. And asymmetrical warfare is one of the new developments in late 20th century and 21st century. Has been forever, but again, the significance had been enhanced in the late 20th century and right now. And then finally, cyber warfare, which is a type of warfare which is completely new. It's began to emerge in the 20th century, and today it's one of the type of warfare we have to face. US presidents always faced dilemmas about what to do with the policies and how to treat their policies and how much money to raise and what specifically to do with the United States and in the world. And well, at the beginning, there was isolationism. United States practiced isolationism up to the beginning of World War II and then retrieved again. But isolation was one of the key pillars on which US foreign policy, security policy were built. Then mostly interventionism, the idea that the United States must act to stop violence and conflicts in many places on earth, must do everything possible to liberate some countries from oppression, defend them from their enemies. And we're back to mixed policies today. So it's a combination of isolationism and interventionism. I don't think we can label US foreign policies with one label, or say under Carter, we had one policy, under Reagan, different policy, under Obama, third, Trump, fourth, and other presidents had different policy. There are always mixtures as we say, but they, political leaders and the advisors, do have certain preferences. And we can say that under Obama, for instance, the United States was more on collective action, as with other countries, more on isolationism rather than interventionism in foreign policy. Under Trump, maybe we can see the continuation of this policy with elements of nationalism, but it's a different story for us, a different discussion when we talk to strategists and grand strategists of US presidents. So presidents choose specific items, and among those items I mentioned one of the textbook cases, well known to students of political science, international relations. It's a case of 1940s, referring to the dilemma that the United States and President Truman faced that time. What do you do with the rising power of the Soviet Union? Its former ally, but yet that former ally had declared that its goal is destruction of capitalist system and domination in the world, and the side which considers you as your enemy. What do you do with your potential enemy? You surrender, you attack, you just ignore. 2 points of view were developed, and one that was associated with had become eventually very influential diplomat, but a diplomat, State Department official in Moscow, George Kennan, who suggested that containment is the best policy. So you don't attack, you don't destroy, you don't panic, you don't be paranoid, but you do everything possible to block the development of Soviet Union internationally. So just don't allow them to reach agreements, don't give them incentives, limit their economic opportunities, aspirations in the world. Containment is containment. Compared to hotheads, it's the governments, Admiral Paul Nitze, also State Department official, who believed that the United States must arm itself and must overpower Soviet Union militarily and act quicker, otherwise it would be too late. And you see, we know today that Kennan points of view prevail eventually. However, these points of view remain competing, not only in our governments, in State Department, Pentagon, the White House, with every administration, but also around the world. So the idea of the hawks who say it will be too late if we just wait another year and not just, that's it. And others who say, no, we have plenty of time. We don't have to be relaxed and complacent, but we can do something else and apply different type of pressure and defend us differently. So that's a permanent struggle between, I would say, hotheads and those who are more calm in government institutions. Realists, well, we can predict that they discuss quantity and quality of weaponry, presence of armed forces overseas, and their ability to defend. Remember, they say, yeah, we understand moral values, we understand principles, but we need to defend moral values and principles. And therefore, armed forces matter, and the more advanced they are, the better for us as a country. For real politic professionals, defending the importance of passages and paths and straits and valleys seaports. It's crucial. It's crucial. That's a picture shows the mock exercises of Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Just as they just pretend that they destroy American battleship right there. Well, in the Persian Gulf, it's important to understand that just one action of one country can somehow just halt the delivery of oil to many places in the world. So it's an important economic point. The United States does everything to defend its secure its oil fields and means to deliver. Potentially in the future, security specialists say that with the melting Arctic Ocean, the passages there would be, unfortunately, could become sources of international tensions and claims other countries about the territorial waters and the inability of other countries to navigate through those waters. So it could be a big issue in the future, hopefully not, but that's what we are warned about, realpolitik professionals. Realism also celebrates the concept of security dilemma. It's a very powerful concept which has been tested for by so many generations. Security dilemma means that that's a situation in which a country A efforts to improve its security cause insecurity in country B. A simple example. So argument is, why can't we just simply allow Iran to develop nuclear weapons? Countries have it, just let him have it. That's it. That's the end of the problem solved. So be it. Security dilemma suggests no, it's not, because Iran getting more secure, whereas Saudi Arabia and neighboring countries become less secure, and they also develop nuclear weapons, such as Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Turkey. Israel will declare that it has nuclear weapons, and Egypt maybe also will show this. So instead of having no nuclear weapons in the region, with exception of Israel, will have all the countries having nuclear weapons, and this is not good for international stability. So in other words, it's just having securing self maybe is a good thing for a country. However, being very much secured means that other countries will be less secure and they will weaponize and arm themselves, and then you will feel insecure, and then this is how arms races take place. Deterrence is one of the pillars of realpolitik. I have mentioned briefly about this, talking about the Soviet Union, and deterrence is one of the key mechanisms of nuclear policies, meaning that a country having nuclear weapons, I understand that the use of nuclear weapons would be suicidal. And the neighbor with nuclear weapons understand this. They both have nuclear bombs and means to deliver them, but will never ever use them, they understand, because it's suicidal. That's why they don't use them. See the logic, a little bit strange if you follow this logic. So to have deadly weapons in order to prevent deadly war, a deadly conflict between the countries. And yet deterrence as a concept was working, some supporters would say, many supporters would say, was working fine in the 20th century and in the 21st century. Of course, nuclear deterrence, unfortunately, is not against the nuclear arms race, so it's at least allowed it. And also we forget about nuclear proliferation, that's when some rogue states or agents or individuals potentially sooner or later could acquire nuclear weapons and use it the way they please, because they're not associated with any government. Realpolitik also is fond of a domino theory. It's one of the classical examples of geopolitics. Domino theory suggests that the loss of one country, government of one country, and the government falls under the influence of, say, opponent, will indicate that many other countries will also fall. So that's why you don't lose a chain or just one element in the chain. Don't lose one country. You hold on to them. Unfortunately, this idea was, although logical as it seems, this policy was used in Vietnam. Back in the 1950s and 60s, both Democrats, Republicans, experts, and people in power in politics suggested that any weakening of Vietnamese governments and any strengthening of a communist government in Vietnam would indicate the loss of Indochina, and then potentially of Malaysia and Burma, and then India, and then who knows, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and that will be definitely global change in favor of communism against other countries. So domino theory, still this theory occupies the minds of some individuals who believe that, that's how the world operates. In particular, it gives examples about the Middle East, suggesting that conflicts and instability in one region, if they're not somehow addressed, can cause instability in many other regions. And there are models that suggest that that's chain reaction of instabilities in those parts of the world. I mentioned about cyber warfare, and this is a subject which we study in detail in my other classes, in particular international relations theory classes. But this is a new kind of warfare, and we do have professional specialists, but they have very insignificant experience still, even though there are years and years of work in this field. But compared to, say, hundreds of years of those who studied conventional warfare and conventional security policies and diplomacy, this is just very, very young discipline. Cyber warfare is not necessarily only about attacking networks and sovereign states, computers, infrastructure, power grids, and communications. That includes, but in focus of attention of political scientists or those who study security in the field of governments and security studies and international relations, we can can study psychological warfare and ideological warfare. Essentially, ideological warfare is about ideas and principles. Psychological warfare is a means to deliver those ideas, and also is creating sort of emotional state, fear, sense of uncertainty, anxiety, to provoke and to make wrong decisions. So it's about attacking reputation of public figures talk about, say, United States, our country. It's about scorning key policies of a country. It's demonizing political views, scorning political institutions like a court system or political parties, criticizing international coalitions, insulting selected groups of people, ethnic, racial, gender group, creating historical myths about your country or that country, designing fake news. All of these things can be created by professionals who, and think about the countries that's work in this area right now, and the governments and the professionals, so who speak, say, English, who understand US history, who understand study of politics, and do everything possible to make the situation in a country much worse, less stable. So it's about anxiety, instability, fear, frustration, unwillingness to participate in politics, just pessimism, and so, basically to demoralize the opponent, as a professional say. I think that's this is something which I believe will attract some of your attention, and you in the future, if you do have skills and knowledge and interest, you can develop your skills in this field, how to defend against such actions, how to understand them, how to prevent these actions, how to assess the importance, because the point of view also exists that this is just not as efficient as any other types of warfare, just a child's play, and that's it's not really interesting, and it's not really significant. But many things are not significant and not very interesting in the past became quite significant and quite impressive as a means to conduct policies, security policies, and in the future. And realpolitik is talking about building security regimes. So you can defend your country by yourself, but you need others to help you with your policies. And NATO is one of the examples of a security regime. I can also mention Shanghai Cooperation Organization, nickname used to be Shanghai 6, but there are more countries right now. So it's countries that coordinate their security policies. First of all, security policies, defense, borders, and cross-border cooperation in terms of migration of individuals and anti-terrorism actions in those countries, and also mutual support of those countries. So realism, of course, it has many examples in security policies. and countries choose their partners, countries choose their coalitions, countries choose their policies due to the principles which I described early. Former enemies become allies. Country make reluctant partners, but partners because they share common interests. And one of the aspects of security policies is to seek help from a more powerful state, powerful militarily, economically. To share intelligence, to get support, experts, and well, cooperation is obvious in those fields. Well, liberalism is, we understand, is a critical theory, and liberalism suggests that realpolitik is making mistakes. It had mistakes in the past, and today, by emphasizing mostly economic military power, and those actions in these fields not necessarily bring lasting security. It must be something else, and something else, remember, it's in the hearts and minds of individuals. It's about promoting collective security and creating conditions in which countries reduce the factor of fear affecting their security policies, and enhance a factor of motivation, incentive in the security policies. So security community, so just based not on necessity to defend, even reluctant defend necessity, but it's on willing desire to be together. So policies, well, transparency is a key policy. So security policy must be transparent. People must understand how things are. And understand how policies are made, and express their ideas and wishes about how much countries should invest in particular fields. It's not about every secret decision, every secret negotiation. No, it's about strategies. And it's a paradox. Security policies in the democratic societies are essentially remote as far as possible from public opinion. As I said, some elements of security policy must be remote, because you do decisions and don't have to advertise to your adversaries and enemies that that's something that should be done tomorrow and next day. But key principles I understand, and you understand, according to principles of liberal policy, supposed to be known to people supposed to make decisions in this policies. So powers through force is obtainable, so you can overpower a country, you can maintain certain stability for a certain period, usually short. So something else must be done. Something else takes time. It's education, it's economic prosperity, economic opportunity, incentives the country receive in exchange for stability and national security. Constructivists indicate ideas or defend ideas that they borrow from realism and liberalism, but they are more into explaining why we do have misunderstandings, we have conflicts, why we have policies that we can't explain in other countries. And I highly recommend to you a book which deals with North Korea. North Korea, well researched and so well reviewed, recommended to me by professionals who for many years worked in the field of US diplomacy, and they studied South Korea, North Korea, and this is what they recommend to me, to understand at least in part why North Korean leadership conducts policies that they're conducting for so many years. Well, this interesting book, and it suggests something unexpectedly controversial. Let's say they suggest that it's not about communism, it's not about just anger, it's not about Marxist ideology and proletarian solidarity with the peoples of the world. No, it's cultural and ethnic. The ideas about the exclusive nature of the Korean race. Sounds strange, but read the book and just understand that it's a cultural ideology which is based on cultural considerations, also rooted in the fact that The leadership perceive the country as under siege, and small, powerful, proud nation is under siege by powerful giants, China, and Russia, United States, and others, and therefore it must do everything possible to resist this challenge. So it's almost nothing to do with communism, Marxism, but mostly it's cultural background. So The Cleanest Race is a great book, published some time ago, but still, I think, very much applicable to events of today. Constructivists also explain that lots of things in national security cannot be understood just through a position of power or resources and strategy. It's a mood within the country. It's a mood within the elites. It's a motivation of the elites. A picture shows that events back in 1979, when during the revolution in Iran, the elites somehow just warming up to the idea of having a great enemy. And so they decided that to declare war in the United States would benefit Iranian interests, and elevate its position around the world and advance Iranian foreign policy goals. It didn't happen, but that was the idea. I believe that, I can also speculate, had Iranian officials, new leaders of Islamic Republic, had they chosen different strategy, neutral policy toward US or friendly policy toward US, that Iran would have been a different country today. It's a matter of choice. They chose confrontation. We have this confrontation for so many years. Of course, Iran blames the United States for the actions, but we can compare both sides and suggest that if both countries chose different policy, we would have had different situation today between us. We also understand that governments can be dominated by people in uniform and without uniform, so wearing business dresses and suits to work. And those individuals who for years, since the college years and later on, develop particular views of foreign policy, and one of them is militarism. We call them hawks, those who believe that security must be defended by violent means, and so security is also must be rooted in the power of the people to resist foreign aggression or foreign domination or foreign influence. And there are pacifists also, those who deny, reject, criticize war under any circumstances. And also there are, we call them hawks, those who believe that if you want to survive, you have to defend. If you defend, you have to buy weapons, create weapons, and build weapons, and fortify your country. And this constant battle. It's not necessarily a battle that just we face again somewhere on the street in the store where we see when they debate things. No, but it's battle of ideas. So how we approach the policies. We are more gentle and we are more considered, or we're more tough and inconsiderate because we define by interest. And this is a development which every country has. Marxists predictably explain security as one which is driven by ruling political elites, economic political elites in the countries. And for Marxists, any war is a result of a struggle for interests among top economic blocs, government elites, banks, economic interests, and to them to resolve problems that occur in the fields of national security is to make sure that the global corporations have less power to dictate what they want in global politics. And also one of the quite enticing ideas that suggests that we can resolve war once and for all if we address the issue of a global poverty. If we can lift people out of poverty, if we do everything possible to create middle class all over the world, wars themselves will be naturally will disappear. I use this posters scorn US presidents. For a Marxist, it doesn't really matter who is president of the United States, Democrat, Republican, independents, he or she, doesn't really matter. They all represent interests of financial and business elites. So therefore, they're puppets in the hands of the powerful. They are powerful people in politics, but the most powerful are people who control business and finances. And therefore, again, political parties are just a masquerade, masks. They serve the interest of the rich and the powerful. And that's the core of problems international security. Feminism, as we remember, is a relatively new branch of studies and applications in international relations. Here, as one of the most important points that feminists raise is that remember that the world is still governed by individuals who accepted the masculine culture of politics, where domination and force are considered to be most important factors. Whereas we refuse to use those factors, refuse to consider the world in terms of domination, geopolitics, and security presence or absence, and power vacuum. We can find better solutions. And one of the first steps in the direction is to have more women in security areas, in the military, and intelligence, in decision-making positions, because they bring different culture of seeing at things from different angle. And also, it's also a very enticing position, just which feminism defends, is that peace is not just absence of conflict, of war. It's just temporarily. We know that the world went through periods of peace, peaceful time, sometimes lasting peace for several years and even decades. But the key issue for human beings on our planet is to create positive peace. So just when people not only free from war, but they're free for their free labor, activities, entertainment, and they're free to achieve their goals. But it's important to have economic security. It's important to have political security for them. It's important to have physical security for them. Of course, important. But as soon as we achieve this on the country's level, the global level, we will have no reason to study security, because we will be secure because we are prosperous, we are free, and we are educated. It's also the most important issue. And one of the implication policies of feminism is a call for women to join politics and join security and be there and change culture of security. Of course, you can study more, and you will study more. Please read the chapter 5 in the textbook. Deals with international security. Here in my lecture, I touched only the tips of the iceberg and the important definitions, some examples. Please read the details and feel free to discuss them. I will be happy to return to the subject of security in my future lectures. Of course, it's a really vast area. It's an extremely important one. But next time we will study with you subject of international law, and international law subject will be followed by discussion of international political economy. But this will happen later on. Meanwhile, thank you so much. It was Eric Shiraev with Study of National Security. See you later.